Hey, what's up? It's Jared with State of Tech, and I wanted to talk today about the main differences between a Mac and a PC. Now, many people have talked about this, and this is obviously going to include some of my opinions, and I know that many of you may not have the same opinion as me, but I think that, never before have the lines been so blurred between whether or not a PC or a Mac is a better option. Now, over the last probably 6 months or so, there's just been a lot of people talking about how Apple has lost their edge. They're not as cool as they were, they're not as forward-thinking as they were, and they're not really innovating, especially on the more advanced level of products anymore. They are a consumer product company building products for the average consumer. And so a lot of people have been saying that. I've even said that myself. And, it really comes down to what you want to use your Mac or your PC or your iPhone or your Android or whatever you're using. It really comes down to specific uses. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about maybe just a few things that I think are what makes a difference between a Mac and a PC. And this hopefully will be useful for any of you who are deciding to maybe make a change. Now, over the last year and a half, I've really started feeling that kind of itch to try something different. I used my first computer was an Apple way back in the 80s. And I had a couple of Apple computers, and then when I reached my later high school years, Apple was just kind of not really doing it, and I switched over to PC for a few years. And I was on PC with a Dell, and I built a few PCs and really kind of got into that world for a little while. Then ended up switching back to Mac when a little bit after Steve Jobs coming back on, and things really started kind of picking up again. And they were producing some really cool products. And so around 2001, I came back to Apple and then just haven't really looked back since. But just with their products not having the kind of horsepower that I need as a video editor, as a photographer, I started looking at PCs and running into those frustrations of switching. Things are different. Trying different things. The machines are different. The quality of some of the machines are different. So I tried different things, and I've actually owned about, I think, 6 different PCs over the last year, really trying to find one that would just fit my needs. And the things that I've came to realize is that Windows has never really been better. I mean, they're fantastic right now. Windows 10 is great. It's a great operating system. It's well put together. It accomplishes a lot. And it really actually does accomplish a lot more than Mac OS on an Apple computer. And the reason being is that Microsoft with Windows has to be a lot of different things. Windows 10 is enterprise level for big business. Windows 10 is Xbox for gamers, and not just Xbox, but also just a platform for gaming in and of itself. And then Windows 10 is everything else that is a computing platform. And so there's really a lot going on in there, and there is a lot. I mean, Apple has, you could play some games on a Mac. You can edit video. There's a lot of things you could do on a Mac, but Mac isn't quite there as far as enterprise. Like, you're not going to go to a big corporation or a hospital or something like that and see a bunch of Macs everywhere. You're going to see Windows machines. They're better integrated for that enterprise. Apple isn't really aiming towards that. Apple is aiming towards the average consumer who wants a Mac because they want a cohesive experience. And so let's switch gears and talk about Mac for a little while and what I just said, that cohesive experience. What Apple has done a much better job at than pretty much anybody else is providing a cohesive experience for their platform. When you use a Mac, it works, it's not buggy, it's pretty secure, and things just operate the way you intend them to do. They're not overcomplicated, but they're also not extremely customizable. One could say the same thing about the iPhone. The iPhone is a really great phone, it's a really great platform, but it's not as customizable as a lot of Android phones and the Android software in general. So you trade out a lot of things. You get the cohesiveness with a Mac and an iPhone and an iPad and their entire product ecosystem. So you get that cohesiveness. Everything plays well together. Everything works well. Their products talk to each other and connect well. And then you go over to Windows, and yes, there's more you can accomplish on a broader spectrum with Windows, but the problem is that it's just not as cohesive. You're constantly trying to get products to work with each other and communicate with each other, which some do a really good job at doing that, but others are a bit more challenging. And that's kind of the problem that, Windows has, being Windows 10 trying to be everything, and especially since Microsoft has made Windows 10 a mobile platform as well. And so when you're using those 2-in-1 PCs with the touchscreen and everything, it's really kind of crazy how much that Microsoft is able to accomplish with one operating system. And so I'm not minimizing that, or I'm not trying to knock them for doing what they're doing. They're building an excellent product, and they're reaching a slightly the same but different market than what Apple is aiming for. So when it comes to deciding a Mac versus a PC, it really does come down to what you are trying to accomplish, what your everyday use looks like. Now for me, I was doing a lot more video editing last year. Last year I started to vlog a little bit, and even the year before I was kind of vlogging off and on, so I was editing videos quite often, and I was running into extremely long render times with my Mac. And so early last year, I started I got a PC, and it was like when I switched back to Mac in 2001. I bought a Mac laptop, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna use this for video editing, but I can't write code, I can't build websites, I can't develop small web apps and stuff like that, just different things that I typically do on Mac. And then I found out that I could. And so when I was looking at switching back to Windows or switching over to Windows, I was looking for software that would allow me to do the work that I currently do and do it effective and do it fast. And that's where the problem started to kind of come. I mean, sure, with video editing, a lot of the software is the same. Adobe Premiere Pro feels the same whether you're on a Mac or a PC. And same with Photoshop and Lightroom and some of the other applications. So you don't really have to worry about that. But applications that I was using for development, just the user experience for some of the software on the Mac that I was using was just much better, not so much on the PC, and I needed 3 or 4 applications on PC to accomplish what one application could do on the Mac in some instances. But for average everyday use, like web browser, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, just stuff like that, it really doesn't matter what platform you're on anymore. The only difference is the cohesiveness between the different devices that you have, and they're getting better with Windows. Windows is getting better at talking to Android phones, and even with the applications that Microsoft has for their computer and their phones with the cloud computing and everything, you're able to move files around and do a much better job. It's just not as cohesive of an experience as it is on a Mac. It requires a little more setup. It requires a little bit more knowing what you're doing than on a Mac, which is kind of sign in, say yes, and it does it for you. So that's kind of the difference, I think, there. So with Mac, I have found that there are developers who pay a little bit more attention to user experience. I think a person who uses a Mac expects their software not only to work well, but also to look good and give them a sense of enjoyment out of using it. And a lot of software on Windows is very effective, very useful, and has all the features, but the user experience just isn't there. It isn't as polished, and sometimes they're thinking like, we'll have an application for each thing instead of just one application that allows you to do everything and accomplish everything. So that's one of the challenges that I found. Now, these days, a Mac and a PC, they're both beautifully built machines. Of course, you could still get some inexpensive, plasticky, cheap Windows computers, But these days, companies like Dell and Razer and Lenovo, some of them are coming out with some beautiful looking machines that look and feel just as great as a Mac laptop. For quite a while, Apple had that. Apple would build these great looking machines that were very sturdy, that were light, that were very functional, very pleasing to the eye, and everything was just a really great experience about using a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air, whatever it was that you were using at the time. It was just a better looking machine. So if you wanted quality, you would go with a Mac because quality just wasn't there with a lot of PCs. And now though, PCs are coming up. They're looking really good. The Razer Blade that I had this year is a fantastic machine, and I absolutely love that machine. The Dell XPS 15 is beautiful, and the display on it, I mean, I would prefer the display on the Dell over the display on a MacBook Pro just because of how beautiful it is. The computer, you open it up and it's just a beautifully designed piece of machinery. And so the lines are continually being blurred because, you know, if you want a great looking computer, there are a lot of options in the PC world now, not just in the Mac. And if you want something with a lot of horsepower, you may have to go over to PC now, depending on what you're doing. There are some Macs that are powerful. The new MacBook Pros are pretty powerful so long as you're using Mac software, and you know, if you're a video editor, you're using Final Cut Pro X. If you're using Adobe Premiere Pro and you want horsepower, you're probably going to need to go with a PC. And we have some tests that we've put up in a couple of other videos and some Mac versus PC rendering videos, and we'll make sure to link to those at the end of this video. But you know, the challenge is that cohesiveness, I think, is what it comes down to for me. So I find myself, you know, being behind the computer, doing a bunch of work, and then I leave and I still need to access things. I still want access to files. I still want to be able to, you know, grab things and email them. I might take some photos with my camera or my phone, and I want to get them on my computer fast so that I can include them in something, or edit them into a video or whatever. And just the experience of doing all of that is a little bit easier on a Mac because of AirDrop between your iPhone, your iPad, and your Mac. It's easy to send files. Of course, you can do that on a PC using some sort of other application or Dropbox or whatever, Pushbullet. There's definitely options. It's just not as built in, and it's not as part of the user experience. It's a process that you have to set up and configure, and that makes it a little bit more challenging because it's not integrated, it's not part of the original design, and it makes it a little bit harder to get used to that process. And they're just because you might have a Dell computer, and you might have a Samsung phone, and you might have a LG smartwatch or something like that. And so none of these products they're designed around maybe similar software. They're designed, you know, with Android Wear, Android phones. They're, you know, the software is originating from the same place, but it's all been changed and modified, and each company puts their little bit of a spin on it because they want their products. You know, LG builds a phone, they want you to buy their watch, and they want those two products to work better together. Samsung builds the same thing. They want their watch and their phone to work well together. Windows, they build a PC. Maybe Dell builds a PC, and Dell wants you to use a Dell monitor and other Dell products. And so they're always thinking of their products first. It's just the problem with the PC world is that it is extremely fragmented compared to the Apple ecosystem. And that is where you kind of come into the issue there. Now, if you are buying a computer to work with other people, it also becomes a little bit more important to maybe be on a similar platform. If you are the only person in the business or in the building with an Apple computer, it's going to be harder for you to interface with everybody else. You're going to need some way of connecting with everybody else. And if you're on Windows and maybe you're, you know, at a creative agency or something like that, and everybody else has an Apple computer, you're gonna have to figure out a different way to exist in that ecosystem. And so that's kind of the challenge, I think, here is that there's The lines are blurred as far as what's a good decision and what's good to choose, but there's still quite a divide between making everything talk and work well without having to completely customize and change and add applications and do stuff like that. For me, being that I work, primarily by myself and integrate with a lot of my own stuff, being on Apple right now tends to make it a little easier for me. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's better, it just makes it a little easier for me. When I need to get files onto my computer and get things and then send them over to James, who helps me edit these videos and helps me with a lot of other tasks, I'm transmitting files over the web using Slack or something like that, and so just getting my files organized and getting them to him, it's a little bit easier for me on a Mac than it is for a PC. It's not that much easier because Windows 10 is great. And get some software on there to manage some of the things that you were used to, like Pushbullet instead of iMessage, or AirDrop, and using communication apps like Slack or something like that. And you're cross-platform and you're blurring the lines even more and making it easier to exist when there's some people using Windows and some people using Macs. So the challenge, I think, really just comes down to what you feel most comfortable with and what your entire device ecosystem is that you exist in. If you want devices that are simple and talk to each other and maybe they're not super customizable, but they work really well together, Apple is by far probably the best option for you. If you are a little bit more into customization and you like to kind of change things and tweak things a little bit and kind of make the experience your own, there's really no better way to go than maybe Windows and Android. Of course, Android, as far as a phone platform, is a lot more customizable than an iPhone. Windows, I think, too, is maybe just a little bit more customizable. There's definitely ways to customize Mac, the Mac OS, but there's a lot more things that you can do for Windows, without causing major issues. So, this is just a discussion in this video, and it's really hard to say one is better than the other, because if somebody came to me and told me their situation, I might recommend a Mac, and then somebody else might come to me and I might recommend Windows to them. It's really a challenge to put it together in a one-size-fits-all package. But what I really believe it comes down to is Apple has that cohesiveness between all of their products. I know Microsoft really wishes that they could have that if the Windows Phone had taken off, and the Windows tablets, and if all of that had taken off and been able to catch some movement, then it definitely would have made for a more cohesive experience with them. But Windows Phone is just, I don't know if it's going to be around much longer. It just isn't a very thriving platform. Even though it's a decent platform, it's just not a very thriving platform at this time. Whereas, Windows 10 and Microsoft's operating system is really great and is thriving, but there isn't a whole product ecosystem like there is with Apple. You can exist completely in Apple's ecosystem, whereas you cannot exist completely in Microsoft's ecosystem without missing out on some things. So let me know what you think. I know this is more of an opinion piece, which I try to stay away from, but I get the question so many times, and especially with my past year of switching back and forth between Mac and PC quite often and trying a lot of different PCs, having built a PC, a lot of people have been asking me questions about it. So I wanted to put my opinion out there a little bit and share that with all of you. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Are you Mac or PC, and why? And maybe even share your ecosystem with me so that I can see what you're using, and maybe even share with me why it works for you, because maybe there's something that you're doing that I haven't tried, and who knows, maybe I'll give it a try. So thanks so much for watching this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to our channel so that you can be notified when we put out new videos. Thanks so much, and we hope to see you back here soon on State of Tech.